Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Choose to Challenge. I am Luana Bradford, and I am real excited for this show today, which is Loving Day. We're going to get into what is Loving Day. If some of you are wondering, it's not Valentine's Day, it's not Sweetheart's Day, it's not Sweetest Day. What is Loving Day? And we're going to get into that because it's a very important day, and it's a day that literally changed history in the United States. And we are still seeing the effects today. And we're also very guarded that we don't want to lose freedoms that have been fought for decades and in some cases centuries. I'm excited because I have two special guests joining me. Barbara Beckley, who is my partner, business partner, as well as she is an E360 TV host, social media personality extraordinaire. And we have Cornelia, also known as Connie Brown, joining us, who is a huge diversity and inclusion advocate. She is an author, she's a speaker, she's a teacher, and she is championing the efforts of Loving Day and to help bring awareness to us as adults within our communities, but also helping us to translate that to key messages for our children so that they can appreciate where we are today and that we have to still stand fast when it comes to our freedoms. This is part two. The first part was last week where Connie and I met and we shared a little bit about Loving Day, got a little bit deep into her story. We're going to take a slightly different spin today, and you'll learn a little bit more about Connie and why this message is so important. And before we get started, I want to do a takeaway and introduce you to our sponsor, the Diamond Factory. Hello, ladies. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome back, Connie.
I'm so honored to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Well, this is exciting because today is actually Loving Day, right? Today is the day. On June 12th, 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court deemed discrimination against marriages of Black and white, interracial marriages, however you want to classify it, as unconstitutional. And it's a really big deal when you think about you love who you love, right, ladies? I mean, who you love is who you love. And to be in a situation, in a nation that started in the 1700s, dictated through anti-misogynistic laws as to who could marry who, is really a tragedy and a blemish on our history. But believe it or not, and we'll get into it a little bit deeper, but the state that Connie and her husband Bernard eventually wed in, they just took the laws off the books, deeming it unconstitutional in the year 2000. 2000. Think about that. So when Connie got married in the state that she married, fortunately, she married someone who was in the military, so he's protected under federal law, right? But it was still deemed illegal. But they did it anyway. Can you hear us, Connie?
I can hear you. Yes, it has a little bit of a delay. This is what's going on. And you know, one of the things is that I was absolutely shocked. I did not even realize that until years later, when I began to understand English better, began to read history, learn about, United States history, and I was absolutely shocked. But I made sure. So far, we have renewed our vows 5 times, 5 times, and each time in a different state. So we are married. We are married 43 years and going.
That's a testament to you, but also just a beautiful testament to the longevity in marriage. In this day and age, we know that it's easier to get divorced than it is to stay married, and it takes commitment, and sometimes it takes enduring some persecution. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we start, I want to share a little bit about Barbara. I want to show a slideshow presentation, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper. Barbara, you're the child of an interracial couple, and you saw firsthand, and we'll dig into that, some of the pains and challenges that your parents had to deal with, right?
Yes, yes, a lot, a lot. But yeah, all for love, though. I mean, that's what I love. I just have to tell Connie, I'm so glad she said 5 times. That's what she called determination, showing love. So I love it.
Yeah, and it's making a stance. It's like, they know they're married. In God's eyes, they've been married, but they're letting the world know, just in case you didn't see it and hear us loud enough, we're going to show it again.
And again and again.
Love it.
I love it. And I'm going to share a little bit as we talk about. I mean, Connie, as you and I talked, our families are all mixed up with a little of everything. But I want to specifically talk about my father's sister. My dad is 92. He's the youngest of the bunch. If his sister were still alive, she would be 116 today. That's 116. And she dared to challenge the system and married a white man back in the 40s. She was in Missouri. Missouri didn't deem it unconstitutional until 1969. So we'll go into a little bit of that. But right now, I just want to show our audience. And Connie, feel free to chime in. I'll pause a little bit with the slideshow because you are far more aware of the history and the breadth of the history than I can speak comfortably to. And Barbara, you too chime in, please. So Loving Day was June 12th, 1967, as I said, that the Supreme Court deemed it unconstitutional. And I want to just read you 2 quotes. Richard and Mildred Loving were the couple who were married. And Richard said, tell the courts, and he's referring to the Supreme Court because they didn't go to Washington, D.C. He said that I love my wife and it's unfair that I can't live with her in Virginia. And we'll get into, again, what this law meant. And then Mildred said, we love each other and got married. We're not marrying the state. The law should allow a person to marry anyone he wants. And that just pause right now. For those who are watching our E360 TV community, on those on LinkedIn and Facebook, think about that. If you have a tap on the shoulder telling you, excuse me, you can't marry that person. They're the wrong shade. Connie, do you want to add a little bit to that? And then I'll turn it to you, Barbara.
Absolutely. And when you just read what Mildred Loving wrote, that just strikes me every time because of the type of personality she had. And I was blessed to meet her family members that actually knew her and dwelt with her. And they would just always say how shy she was. But when it came to that love that she had for her man, for her husband, it made her speak out, and it made her, you know, so passionate about everything that was going on. And here, and also they looked at her as a black woman, back then colored woman, but she always made very sure that everyone knew she too was multi-ethnic, multicultural, especially with the indigenous community, Rappahannock Indian, and a little bit of Cherokee. And she honored all of them. And as a matter of fact, the Rappahannock Indian community danced at when she was honored at one of her at her gravesite when she finally got her gravestone. But again, for people to have to stand up and tell politicians, I'm just going to put it, out there, that they have no right to decide who someone loves. And especially if your belief system is Christianity and they both were Christians, um, what God puts together, no man, and it talks about humanity, has a right to put under. So how dare the government intercedes and decides who is allowed to love whom? Back to you.
Wow, that was powerful. That was a drop the mic. So Barbara, I'm gonna let you pick up the mic now.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, now you want me to pick up that mic? Oh my God. Okay. Well, first of all, every time I see this and I see the quotes from Richard and Mildred Loving, I go back, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more in a minute about my mother and my dad. And basically, like my mother, basically, that was an interracial couple. And I always remember what my dad said. And he said, I don't care what anybody says. You're my wife, and you're my daughter, and that's all that counts. And I love both of you to the end of the world. And that's what he would always say to us. So when everybody, including his family, they totally disowned him, brothers, sisters, mother, dad. On my mother's side, again, disowned, basically. They told him in their face, if you get together, you stay together, you're not part of family no more. You don't even have family. That's what they told him. And he said, okay, because I got my family. And he looked over at us and he said, this is my family. And just to stand strong in that, just like, the queen here and her husband and a lot of people that are in interracial couples, that just moves me so much. It always reminds me moving forward to always stand on what your beliefs are. And that's what my father taught me just from doing what he did.
I love that. And the reason why you two being here is so important is we're not back in 1967. I mean, we're dealing with your lived experiences that you either grew up with or as young adults experienced in this country. That wasn't too long ago. And I'm certain there are still those individuals that may look at you a certain way, have their little whispers and murmurs behind your back, simply because you either came from a family that said, we love who we love, or you made the choice to love who you love. Let me go a little further here. Let me move this. So there is a book that was written, that's The Lovings. It's an intimate portrait. And the individual, the photographer, just captured some beautiful images of the Lovings. And I want to just walk us through some of those and then I'll turn it to you in some cases, Connie, to give some context. So the Lovings lived in Virginia. This is Mildred and this is Richard. And for me, I'm looking at this and I'm reading into it. It's like stories are worth pictures are worth 1,000 words. And it's almost like I see her saying, look, we can do this. But I see him looking off like, you don't know the fight ahead, right? It's like she's like, hey, come on, let's do this. But I just see him just kind of as a man, right? A man wants to protect his family. And that's kind of what I'm getting from this photo. Like, I'm hearing you, but I'm seeing what's lying ahead, right? So that's just how this communicated to me. Connie, I'll turn it over to you.
Ms. LaWanna, one of the things I am already starting to tear up, because when these pictures were taken, both of them already had been arrested. And also she had to stay behind. You see, when they got arrested, they let him out sooner because he was a white man. And she had to stay behind. And she stayed in that jail, prison, whatever you call it, and stayed strong. And she began to, within herself, build that case for all of us. And what I see, she went in, and I spoke to her daughter-in-law who came to our very first Loving Day. And she said before she went into jail, she was just Mildred, a very shy woman, cooking at home, loving with her family. He was a race car driver, by the way. A lot of people don't know that. Going out to the racetracks with him, supporting him. And she said, and she went into prison like that. But when she came out, it was a different person that came out. And that's the person that is looking in his eyes right now, saying, we got this. You had to leave me behind. And her daughter-in-law said, she told him, it's okay, Richard. You need to do what you can do now. You free. And she said he was so destroyed that he had to leave her behind. Can you imagine how that felt? I mean, every single time I think about that just had to be, heart-wrenching. And here they're looking at each other and continuing that fight for all of us.
Yeah, that's huge. Barbara, I'm going to turn it over to you in a slightly different spin. You have a company called the Diamond Factory. Your dad called you a diamond. Tell us why the diamond is symbolic of what the Lovings went through and what it means to you.
Well, with the diamond, with my dad and how it comes together is because I was dealing with a lot when I was a child, very muchly, talked about in school. Basically, people said I wasn't worth anything. I didn't have no value. But I would come home every day crying, and the person that was there at the door all the time was my dad with open arms. And he would always just give me those big bear hugs and just hug me all the time. And I would always tell him, I said, Daddy, something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong with me. And they also knew about, my dad, my mother, my dad too. So that added a little bit to the issues at school. And he would just look at me and say, you know what, Barbara, you're just a diamond in the rough. He said, you're going to be this wonderful, beautiful diamond when you get older, but you're just going to go through things and issues and the cuts and stuff. And then he would relate it to what we were going through, far as him and my mother, but the whole family. And he said, I just want you to know that you stay strong and I won't be there all the way. And he would always remind me of, when you look at a diamond, and I never said this is deeper into it, he would always tell me it fastens, it shines around everywhere. And he said, and it doesn't think about color or anything. It just shines on its own. He said, that's what you're going to do. You're going to be shining like that diamond. Doesn't matter what you are, what color, creed, or whatever, but you're just going to shine in the universe for everybody. And he said, I'm going to be your cheerleader all the time.
I love that. Very, very, very powerful stories. Let's go to this next one. Let's talk about the children now. Barbara, you've shared your perspective and the bullying and everything that you dealt with, being who you were, who your parents were. These are the children of the Lovings, and like any child, they were here. It's a beautiful photo capturing them having fun, right? But when we're in our family setting, I want to turn this to you, Connie. We're protected, we're shielded, right? We feel loved. But when we step out into the world, and sometimes the world is not the prettiest place. How did you and Bernard help to prepare your children for the harshness of the world, being that they were multicultural and multiracial?
Remember, most people had no issue with it, but those who did were cruel beyond measure. And I remember a moment where I was told, if you have to do this, as if I was about to commit a massive crime, if you have to do this, don't have any children. They will never know who they are and they will not make it. That burned a message into my soul that when I gave birth, and mind you, when I gave birth, there's no one that came to the hospital to visit us. There's no one that came to do the things that I saw so many people do for other women that just had their babies. There was so much I don't even know, in some dismay, in some concern, and in others just complete shock that now she had her first mixed child. And I never forget being at the hospital holding my baby, and I received a phone call from someone, and you know that ignorance will remain nameless, and asked that same question that they asked Prince. What's his name? I can't even say his name, but I get upset I don't remember anyone's name. You know,
Prince Harry?
yes, asked him, and they asked me, what's the color of the baby? That wasn't how are you doing? And I had two extremely complicated births, extremely complicated, okay, preeclampsia and everything. And all these things burned a scar in my heart. And so when my children got older, we lived in Hawaii, thank God. The most loving community I ever lived in. Okay. But I didn't have anyone to teach me African American history. Everything I learned over there, you know, that was like our first duty station. My husband was always gone. So it was just me and my babies. And I was mother hen. But one thing I told them all the time from beginning, you can be anything that you want to be. You are not, if they say you are half breed, we could have put this in the trash. And I remember that I made them write all the bad names that I knew they would hear. I made them write it down. I said it to them first so they can hear it under protection of me. This is what you're going to hear. Let's write it down, and we're putting it in the trash can. And I was like, now it is your choice to pick it back up out of the trash can if somebody uses it against you. Or you're going to become the best version of yourself that you have been designed to be by God. Also, I always would tell them, you're not half of anything. You're beautiful. You're a beautiful remix of everything. And so you are what Martin Luther King was talking about. You are, the perfect human being that can be a bridge. There is a song that not the judge,
Yeah, the judge.
Judds,
GDS. Mm-hmm.
my German accent, sometimes I hear it myself, but that says love can build a bridge. And I told my kids, you guys are the bridge. You are the bridge, Miss Barbara. You're the bridge of bringing together people, whatever different they call themselves. And I don't believe in that we are different races. And I always tell people, I did not marry a different species. And then I'm crack a joke and say, well, sometimes I wonder when we have an argument. But anyway, but but he is just browner than I am. He grew up different in a different culture, a different way. I think that if we allow people to label us, and that's what I always would tell my kids, don't allow people to put a label on you. And I said, always live outside the box. You got a mommy that lives outside the box, so you stay outside that box with me. We're not going to let humanity put us in a box. Doggone it, in my husband's words.
I love that. Love that. Well, let's now talk about. So you mentioned that they were both arrested. They both served time. Richard, because he was a white man, got out sooner than his wife. She still had to stay there, and she fought and she wrote a letter to Robert F. Kennedy, who was the attorney general at the time, and the American Civil Liberty Union actually appointed volunteer. So this is Bernard Cohn, volunteer attorneys to represent them. So I want to just put this into context, and I want to turn it over to you, Connie, and definitely Barbara chime in. We're back in the 50s, 60s, late 50s, early 60s. You're a Black woman in the South. I'll say that again. You're a Black woman in the South. Yet something in her stirred up to say, I know society is saying I have limitations. I know society is saying I'm supposed to stay within this box in how I operate, in how I navigate. But I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to write. I'm going to plead my case. I'm going to let the world know, the world being the political parties, the political side of the day, know that there is an issue. I'm an American, and I have a voice, and I want that heard. And I want to pause right there, because even today, whether it's in the US and other countries, there are times when women feel like they are silenced or sidelined. And I think there's a lesson that we can take, that if we truly believe in something, that we can rise up, and our collective voice is an amazing power. And we've seen that with the Me Too movements and other movements that are out there, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. So there are all these political movements that come out of a place of pain, a place of hurt, and ultimately a place of anger that says enough is enough. Connie, turning over to you.
Miss Barbara, do you want to go first?
You can go, Queen.
And if I talk too much, just do like this. Okay. So here's one thing that you just said that is so true, that she must have said in there and said, my voice needs to be heard. And I cannot say how she felt as an African American woman, Black woman, colored woman, because I'm not. I can only speak from a Bavarian woman, and the label people put on me is white. The label that they put on me is white, but my white privilege has been revoked and is being revoked constantly when they meet my brown family. So I would have a voice initially until, and speak, and if I speak on different things, but when they meet Bernard, and this even happens still today, it is shocking, but it is true. And this is why I tell so many people. So my white privilege, where my voice can be heard in many places, gets revoked, and suddenly people shut me down. So that's what I can speak from, how that feels. But then I also can tell you that for many years I was quiet and just spoke to my children and a very small circle until something happened to me. Now, I very seldom tell that story, but I too was arrested before. Okay. I know what it feels like sitting in a cell. And can you imagine Cornelia Brown in a cell? Oh my God. But what happened is I came home, I was cooking, and we were on the military base. Surprisingly, it happened on the military base. And one of my daughters came running, and said that they were playing in a courtyard. And a lady came out, well, she's not a lady, a woman came out and told them to go, you have N babies, go home to your N whore mother. Okay. And I prepared them for it. But when it happened, there was so little. I was so upset. I'm not a fighter. I love people. I probably, as I knocked on her door and told her to come outside and let me just take her from one corner of that courtyard to the other. I was just a passionate, hurt mother. She called the military police. They came, and my husband was in Korea during that time. They came, and I refused to allow them to put me in that MP car and my children. And I was fighting. You would have been so proud of me. I pulled everything, and I told them, please let me call someone to pick up the girls. My girls will not ride in this police car. And so I had people that loved me that came and got my daughters. They were standing there as the man said, if you don't stop crying, we're going to handcuff you in front of your children. And they just looked at me with their big old eyes, and everybody told them it's going to be okay. The beautiful part was, by the time I arrived there and they had me in a cell to search, the lady said I had a knife and threatened her with the knife. We had other people. No one else came to my rescue but my African-American friends. They all pulled their funds and they were ready to bail me out. However, there was so everyone, all the MPs were white. And my white privilege was revoked. And when they saw my mixed children, what their label for them is the mixed children, they treated me worse without any rights. I felt it at that moment where all my rights were stripped because I'm married to a Black man. When a detective came, he was the only African-American detective person there. And they told him there's no way that she was going to kill this lady. There is no way. And he said, something is wrong. And he stopped. The lady was frisk searching me at that time. So what I'm saying is, when you're being stripped of your voice, that something wrong is being done to you, then there comes a moment where you either say, okay, I'm going to be quiet and not speak up. But that's how I can imagine she felt when she came out of that cell. And when I came out of that cell, it was on. I did not care who was trying to quiet me down. We were going to speak in behalf of every multiracial family out there that decided to love outside the box that the people try to put them in. I told you, Miss Barbara, once I get started, I won't be quiet. I turn it back over to you.
That's okay, Queen. Your stories is powerful. I just want to add to that. That I was just thinking about the other side of it, because I know my mother being Black and my dad, of course, being white, she seen some of the privileges, in a sense, that she was getting just because he was in the room with her. And that's what sparked her to stand even taller, because she already was this Mississippi young little girl, and coming from Mississippi to Chicago, young age, didn't have the education, and then was in a family that was a whole nother story with that. And then she met this white man who basically said to her, I love you already. And they met 5 days, and he told her in 5 days how much he loved her. She's looking at him like,
Oh,
are you crazy? He says, there's something special about you. He said, then you have this little zest about, because my mother always had that like oomph. she no matter what, she could tell everybody off, but then she had to be, and then with her being with him, he kept telling her, you can stand stronger now because I got your back. And that's what happened through their relationship. It built even her confidence level even more. And, it basically at that time, it took him being a white man, for her to get in certain rooms. Because if he was in the room, she was just treated just like every other, Black person. And I was too, being her daughter. But soon as it seemed like he walked in the room, it's like, everything's changed, twisted because of that. And my mother, told me, she's like, you see what's going on, because that's what was going on. I mean, that's how the world was at that time. I mean, we were in the late 60s, 70s. So I found out where she was like really learning herself and learning how to love him, not just because of the color anymore, but she really truly loved him because he kept telling her, I got your back. And she's like, well, they're going to say this. And I'm, I'm a Black woman. He said, I got your back. And she would always just argue with him. He's like, I got your back. I love you. That's all that counts. So, I think about that, and I'm just so happy that she was to have a voice, and he was giving her the voice without just that. He wasn't even looking at color. He was looking at the fact that this is this woman. I love her much. I want people to know who she is. Period.
I love that, and I think it's. There's still battles today. We know that. I mean, the U.S. is more divided than it's ever been in our lifetimes, and to think that you have to deal with these biases and prejudices, whether they're conscious or unconscious, they're there, right? But it's about, and to those that are listening, we're here talking about Loving Day, which is a ruling, Supreme Court ruling that deemed anti-misogynistic laws unconstitutional, that it is okay to marry outside of your race, June 12th, 1967. And we're talking about this in context, but then we're going broader in how it's impacted our lived experiences. And I know I was talking to, to my brother, and us growing up in Europe, being in a military family, we grew up in this microcosm. It's like a little bubble. And it wasn't until I moved to Georgia that I started to really see and maybe become more aware, more sensitive to this Black-white divide. I'm like, how is this here? Did I not see it? Did I not pay attention to it? But unfortunately, the stuff that I think it's just a cancerous way of thinking is still there, but it takes us being willing to have the conversation, to create those introductions, for people to be willing to see beyond their limited sphere and be willing to understand and appreciate and celebrate the other communities. Because as you said, Connie, we are one humanity, right? And so if you're humanity, there isn't race. Race is a man construct designed to divide. So I know some of you are challenged by that statement, but do a little research on race and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But let's not go down this rabbit hole. I'm just going to go through a couple of photos really quick. And I love this, you know, capturing the intimate moment between a man and a wife, and just how all of us can relate if we've been in any intimate relationship, you know, resting in comfort in the arms of or in the lap of someone that we love. And that should be a freedom that everyone has at any time in their life, no matter if you're black, white, brown, whatever your complexion is, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. You have the right to love and to be loved. Here's another one. And what I liked about this is if you look at the books behind them, these are legal books. So it shows you that they were, you know, in negotiation, in conversation with their attorneys at the time. And if you think back then, public display of affection wasn't at an all-time high like it is today. You know, so they're in a professional setting. And for him to put his arm around her like that, to me, speaks volumes. It's like it's, without them saying anything, it says everything. Do you two agree?
Absolutely. And, you know, again, it is so beautiful because at that particular time, whenever that picture was taken, something must have changed. She has a smile of hope on her face. And she has that, you know, he's comforting her and he's like, I got you, baby. That's, you know, something like that. But something changed because she has that smile and there is a sparkle in her eye where she sees that there is hope. And that at this moment, she was the catalyst to change something for all of us. Think about it. How many different holidays are being celebrated all year? How many, just, you know, there's so many things being lifted up. But how quiet, unless we speak up and speak out, and I thank you ladies so much for lifting Loving Day up. How, you know, there are pockets all over the world where it's celebrated today. The flagship Loving Day, by the way, is in New York. They had a big celebration yesterday. But there still is a hush hush over it. You know, where even the mayor yesterday, when she came out, I was so excited. The first African American and woman in Georgia, in Jonesboro, Georgia, that was so exciting. And she said, you know what? We want to undergird Loving Day because we really have not done anything with it. We have next week, you know, when Loving Day passes, then it's Juneteenth week. You know, that's the next big celebration. But all of it is meaningful. All of it needs to be lifted up. And that's that glimmer of hope that I see, that smile, where God must have told her and the angels whispered in her ears, yeah, baby, we are here now and you cannot erase us anymore. Back to you.
I love that. I'm going to do a quick takeaway and we'll be back for our final few minutes of the show.
created to succeed, designed to win, equipped to overcome, anointed to prosper, and blessed to be a blessing. Boom!
That makes me giggle every time.
I just salute you and others who, again, we fight causes from our place of pain, a lived experience. Something is sparked within us that causes us to say, look, if no one's going to stand, it's going to be me. God, if you're going to pick someone, choose me. Here I am. And I just, again, salute you. I salute Barbara for always talking about, love. That's the ultimate message. It's a message of love and embracing and accepting everyone. I love this picture. It's like, how bold is that? It's this white man kissing this black woman in the early 60s in rural Virginia. We're not in the major city. We're in rural Virginia. And it's like, yeah, this is my man. This is my woman. Now what? I want to honor Barbara's parents, John and Sally Beckley, who in the 70s had to put up with a lot of ash and trash. Like Barbara said, her mom moved from Mississippi and then into the big city of Chicago. And they went through good times. They went through challenging times. But Barbara, I want you to share about a financial barrier that your dad had to find a way to break through. And that was when your parents were about to buy their home.
Yeah, so I'll never forget. Every time I look at my dad, me in that picture, I think about that story. And I was around 12 years old, and he said, "We're going to get you your house, your dream house. We're going to get it finally." And I was like, "Ooh, good." He said, "You're going to come with me. You're going to go through the paperwork, go to the bank and everything." So he went to the bank, got in the bank. I'm just holding his hand. We walk through the doors. Boom, we get stopped right by the security and police. And the first thing the police said is that child lost? And we basically just took our hands and pulled them away. And he was like, "Are you okay, sir? We don't know if this child, what's going on and everything." And he looked at the police, looking at the security guards all crazy. And he's like, "What are you doing? That's my daughter. How dare you?" And they're like, everybody's like, "Oh." And mostly white people in there. I think it was just me and one other black person was in there, but that was it. But for him to stand down and say it loudly, it wasn't like he was soft with it. My father was like, "That is my daughter. You should have did that." And he grabs my hand, my dad, and we go to the loan officer. We sit down, and then the loan officer, my dad said, "Well, I'm here to fill out the paperwork, sign for the house." And the law officer looks at him, and he looks at me, and he said, "This is my daughter." For some odd reason, all of a sudden that everything was okay was not okay anymore with the paperwork. And he said, "Well, it looks like we're having some issues here. We found some things." My dad said, "Wait a minute." They called me. They said everything was done. I did all the paperwork. You have everything. What is going on? He said, "It's just some technicalities. We can't do your loan today, sir. Sorry." And then I looked at my dad, and my dad looked at me, and I looked at my dad and said, "Well, it looks like we're not going to get that house that you said we're going to get." And he's like, "No, we're going to get that house. It just won't be here." And we walked out that door. And every time I think about that, now that I'm grown and he's, out up there, I always think, I said, he stood his ground everywhere, knowing that he was getting the hits, knowing that people was looking at him crazy. And I said to myself, but he stood. But he was showing me to do the same thing as I was getting older. So thank you, Luana, for showing that. Because like I said, every time I see that picture, I think about that story. You just got to just keep pushing and believing yourself. And that's what he did. He believed in our family. He believed in no matter what, he went the distance.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And again, to the listening audience, we're here talking about Loving Day, the fight to marry who you want to marry. Mildred and Richard Loving did just that. And June 12th, today is June 12th, we celebrate Loving Day because that was the day that the U.S. Supreme Court deemed interracial marriages constitutional, that it was no longer illegal. And you think about just, again, the different faces of discrimination, right? Whether you were Black, whether you were white, whether you were blended, the discrimination was there. And unfortunately, still is. Still is. But we're moving the needle, right? This is my aunt. All the photos are at home with my dad, but I actually have this photo of her, Anna Mae Bradford Ferris. This is my dad's sister, oldest sister, who I said if she were living today would be 116. She married a white man, Mr. Ferris, and my Uncle Ferris, and they lived in Missouri. Missouri didn't deem it constitutional until 1969. They got married in 1948. They had to leave their community, their family, and go to California just to feel safe. At that time, lynching was very commonplace. He didn't want his wife to come up missing or to be, as one of the poems says, strange fruit hanging from a tree. Think about that. They had to leave family, their community, for the safety of one another. And it was a blessing to have known her. She traveled the world, but she was very much, I remember talking to her at times, and I would say, because she would be so angry if she would talk about the past. And as a young person, I thought, Anna Mae, you're a racist. And she goes, I am not, but you don't know what we've gone through. So I'm speaking, what you're hearing, you're calling it racist, but what you hear is my pain. You hear my pain. It doesn't mean that because she's actually interracial herself, just like Mrs. Loving, my great grandpa was half white, but it didn't matter because the world just looks at complexion, right? And you're judged by complexion. It didn't matter that she was a Bradford. It was, you're a Bradford and you're okay, but what, you mean you went and married this white man and you think you're going to live in Kansas City? You think you're going to live in these neighborhoods? No. So I just wanted to share that with you, that, it's, you see how snazzy she was. So, just a beautiful woman, but they were determined to do what they needed to do. And in some cases, the Lovings, they stayed and they fought. But sometimes when your life and your safety is at stake, sometimes you do have to flee for safety. Sometimes that's just the path you have to take. Sometimes you have to be willing to stay silent so that you can live to fight again, right? You fight in a different way, a better way. And like right now, Cornelia, you continue the fight by amplifying this message, by telling people about your book, When Black and White Makes Brown, by saying why it's important that we have a community that's diverse and that's inclusive. That's a fight, but it's happening on a different scale, right? It's happening in a different way, right? So before we sign off, we got a few more minutes. I had to end it with the couple of the hour, Bernard and Cornelia Brown. And Connie, do you know how hard it was to find this little insert over there of the two of you? I could go back only so far. But I love these photos, and it shows, to me, the first little insert. It's like this young couple, saying, here we are, taking this military picture. Then the second one, when you're in the pink, it's just this confidence in you that I see, this expression. And I see this handsome Black man standing proud that he has this powerful, strong woman next to him. And color is irrelevant. It's the strong, powerful woman that's standing next to him. And then here I see him now behind you, right? We always say behind a strong man is a powerful woman, but I see he's also the wind beneath your wings in this last photo, your strength to allow you to continue to soar and be that mouthpiece, be that vocal requirement that this time, for such a time as this. So I just love these photos, and I'm gonna turn it over to you. We have just 2 more minutes before we have to sign off.
How did you find this one? First of all, that little small picture that is actually not our wedding picture, but it is the very first time that we renewed our vows, because we were in Hawaii. That is on the very court, standing right in front of that place where the MPs came later and arrested me. And by the way, let me make sure that everyone, it was found out that the lady was just using that, and that she had absolutely no grounds, to accuse me of anything. But also, it shows that so many people told us, you two will never make it. We've been together 45 years and married 43 years. So, that is what you see. And they said you will never build anything, that no one is going to do business with you. And, given all glory and honor to God, we are a top agent team with Metro Brokers, and prosperity is ours. And we are calling that wealth in, not just to hoard it, but to share and to have others participate, and let them know. Don't allow them to put these labels on you. Yes, you can make it. You will make it if you tune it out. All this negative stuff, if you tune it out and you look within that love that both of you have in your heart. And I have so many more stories to tell. I know the 2 minutes are almost over, but Miss Barbara, we just had an incident with an appraisal where a case, that we were going to sell the house, but the appraiser saw the couple and refused to appraise it for what it was really worth. But we serve a mighty God. We yanked the appraisal, gave it to another appraiser. But here's the sad part. We made sure the appraiser could not see the couple. And it appraised above what we had listed for. That was just in January. And we are going to fight with that appraisal company, because that was racist to the core. So it still exists, and we all have to stand up for one another. We, of course, we speak to the people that love us. We preach into the choir, but those that standing on the outside, we need them to help us to bring awareness to this foolishness and stop it and pull it out by its root. Back to you, Ms. Amana. And again, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak our heart and speak our passion. And love has no color. It just doesn't.
I love it. Well, Barbara, Connie, thank you so much for joining us for Choose to Challenge. Again, we encourage all of you, now that you're aware, spread the word. Remember, next year, June 12th, celebrate and honor the love story that changed the world. Be a part of the change that we want to see in the world. Be loving in all that you do. Allow yourself to be positioned to understand, to lean in, to get to know, to accept, and to allow others to be. That's when we can truly make a difference in the world. And that's what Choose to Challenge is all about. And I always say that when opportunity and vision intersect, success is inevitable. It is National Loving Day. And we here at Choose to Challenge, I, Lawana Bradford, Barbara Beckley, and Cornelia Connie Brown celebrate and honor National Loving Day, but we honor the act of love every day. Be blessed, everyone.